For decades, if you said the government was drugging its own citizens to control their minds, you were a conspiracy theorist, a crank, someone who'd watched too many movies. And then the documents came out because one of the wildest conspiracy theories of the 20th century wasn't a theory at all. It was a real, funded, official program. The Central Intelligence Agency really did try to build mind control. They really did dose unwitting Americans. And when they were about to get caught, they burned almost all of the evidence. This is what survived. To understand why they did it, you have to understand what they were afraid of. It's the early 1950s, the Cold War, and American prisoners of war are coming home from Korea saying strange things, praising communism, confessing to crimes they never committed. Washington becomes convinced the enemy has cracked something the West hasn't, a way to reach inside a human being and rewrite them. They had a word for it: brainwashing. The fear was simple. If the Soviets and the Chinese could program a mind, America needed to do it first. Not just to defend against it, to use it. Imagine an agent who could be given orders they'd never remember receiving. A prisoner who would tell you anything. A perfect, deniable weapon. The human brain itself. So in 1953, the director of the CIA, Allen Dulles, authorized a program to find out if it could be done. Its name was MKUltra, and the man they put in charge was a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. His mandate was almost cartoonishly broad: the research and development of materials capable of controlling human behavior. In plain English, find a way to take over a person's mind. And they had a nearly unlimited black budget to do it. One of Gottlieb's first moves tells you everything. He arranged for the CIA to buy up the entire world's supply of a new, barely understood drug, LSD. Not a sample, the whole supply, because MKUltra was about to become the largest, strangest, and most unethical human experiment in American history. And you were never supposed to know. MKUltra was not one experiment. It was at least 149 separate subprojects, farmed out across roughly 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. Most of the people running these studies didn't even know who was really funding them. The money moved through front organizations with respectable names, and the subjects, the people it was actually done to, were often prisoners, mental patients, soldiers, and ordinary citizens who never agreed to anything, who never knew they were in an experiment at all. Consider one subproject. The CIA set up safehouses in San Francisco and New York. They hired prostitutes to lure men off the street back to these apartments, and once inside, the men were secretly dosed with LSD, while a federal agent named George Hunter White watched from behind a one-way mirror, drink in hand, taking notes. They called it Operation Midnight Climax. The point was to see what a person would do and what they might say when their mind had been chemically hijacked without their knowledge. Ordinary men, drugged by their own government, for research. And it wasn't harmless. In November 1953, a U.S. Army scientist named Frank Olson attended a work retreat. Gottlieb spiked his after-dinner drink with LSD without telling him. Olson spiraled into a severe crisis over the following days. And 9 days later, he went out a 13th floor window of a Manhattan hotel. It was ruled a fall. His family was told almost nothing. Decades later, when his body was exhumed and re-examined, a forensic scientist found injuries that raised a darker possibility: that Frank Olson may not have jumped at all. The CIA eventually paid his family a settlement. They still deny the worst of it. And some subprojects deliberately targeted the people least able to say no. At a federal hospital in Lexington, Kentucky, a place that was supposed to treat drug addicts, a doctor named Harris Isbell ran CIA-funded experiments on the very patients in his care. The surviving records describe one study in which 7 black men, all struggling with addiction, were given LSD every single day for 77 days straight. When their bodies built up a tolerance to it, Isbell didn't stop. He just doubled the dose, then tripled it, then quadrupled it, to force the drug through. And the payment these men received for being experimented on for months? The drug they were addicted to, heroin, handed to them by the doctor as a reward for compliance. Sit with that. A government hospital took people at their most vulnerable, dosed them with a mind-altering chemical for 11 straight weeks, and paid them in the exact substance that had destroyed their lives. The system that was supposed to help them found them the easiest of all to use, because almost no one was ever going to come looking for them. But the most chilling case might be the one that looked the most like medicine. Under Subproject 68, the CIA funded a respected psychiatrist named Ewen Cameron at a hospital in Montreal. People came to him for small things: anxiety, postpartum depression. What some of them got instead was a technique Cameron called psychic driving. He would attempt to erase a patient's existing mind with massive doses of electroshock, drug-induced comas that lasted weeks, and hallucinogens. And then, into that blank, he'd play a looped, recorded message. the same phrase, over and over, hundreds of thousands of times, trying to build a new personality from scratch. It did not build new people. It shattered the ones who came in. Many never fully recovered. So how does a program this enormous, running for 2 decades, stay hidden? The answer is the darkest part of the whole story. In 1973, as the Watergate scandal was tearing Washington apart and investigators were starting to circle the intelligence agencies, the director of the CIA, Richard Helms, gave an order. Destroy the files. Destroy all of them. And they did. The vast majority of MKUltra's records, the subproject details, the results, and crucially, the names of the people it was done to, were deliberately destroyed, which means the full scope of MKUltra is not classified. It is gone, unrecoverable. The victims of the largest mind control program in American history can never be fully identified because the people who ran it made sure of it. As far as they were concerned, the story was over. There was no evidence left. They were wrong about that, by a single filing error. In 1975, in the wake of Watergate, Congress finally turned its attention to what the CIA had been doing at home. The Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission dragged the first pieces of it into the light, confirming, for the first time publicly, that the government had run drug experiments on both willing and unwitting Americans. It was a scandal, but most of the paper trail was already ash. And then, in 1977, the break. A researcher named John Marks filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and it turned up a cache of about 20,000 documents that had somehow survived the purge because they'd been stored in the wrong building, a financial records center. The accounting department, of all things, is the reason we know any of this at all. Those pages became the basis for a full Senate hearing, and under oath, the CIA had to admit it. The subprojects, the institutions, the unwitting subjects, all of it, real. Sidney Gottlieb himself testified, under a fake name, with a memory that senators noted was suspiciously vague for a man only recently retired. The architect of America's mind control program sat in front of Congress and could barely seem to remember building it. And here's the thing that should stay with you. Everything I've just told you isn't from a forum, or a documentary, or a trust me. It's from the United States government's own declassified records. The thing people were mocked for believing turned out to be almost exactly true. And it isn't ancient history. As recently as this year, members of Congress have held new hearings, still pushing the CIA to finally release what remains hidden. 50 years later, we still don't have the whole file. So let's be clear about what MKUltra actually proves. Not that every conspiracy is true. Most aren't. It proves something narrower and stranger. That they would never do that is not evidence. That it sounds crazy is not a rebuttal. And that sometimes the only reason a secret ever sees daylight is a clerk who filed a box in the wrong room. 20,000 pages survived. The other files, we'll never see them. We don't know how many people were used. We don't know all the names. We don't know everything they tried or whether it ever really stopped. So the next time something gets laughed out of the room for sounding too paranoid to be real, remember the accounting department and ask yourself the only question that matters. What are we being told is crazy right now that we'll be reading about in the declassified files 20 years from now? This was the hidden signal. If this reached you, subscribe, because we go looking for the things they'd rather you never file under real. And tell me in the comments, what's the one conspiracy you think gets declassified next? I'll be reading.